Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're taking a look at a mid-shadow deck. They've been changing slightly, not too much over the course of the last probably couple of weeks at least, but this has piqued my interest a bit mainly because of the Authoress, which is an old staple to the mid-shadow archetype. It was very common back when Prince Catacomb first launched due to the fact that they instantly curved into each other pre-nerf, and back again, not too surprising, but definitely a nice inclusion, so why not take a look at this deck? Especially since we don't get to cover many shadow decks at the moment, so why not? We've also got, of course, the triple Demon Lord, the Black Swan. We've only got one Ruler Aisha in this deck and one Corpse Lord, which I think is fine. We also got one Catha, so a lot of spread out legendaries, but at the same time only running a total of 6, which is pretty respectable for decks. We're also running the Troth's Curse, which did get buffed slightly with a cost reduction, which is nice. And of course, everything else is pretty stock standard all the way through, with no real major change outside of what we'd already mentioned. So we'll get right into it and take a look. So first up, we have Sword. Still one of the strongest decks personally, Sword being pretty top of the meta in regards to pretty much everything at the moment. But we do have Troth's Curse, Skull Ring, and Odile, which that's not too bad in a Sword matchup. A couple of ways to pump things on the board, a way to remove stuff, and another way to just clear out wide, which works in our favour. And of course, the double Peacocks is also quite good. Being able to use both of those fairly early on will give us some nice draw power. And an Authoress, a great way to remove any 2 health followers from our opponent's board, which Sword is pretty well known for. Of course, Mars Silent Flame General, not something I expected to see right now. It's a little annoying. Could have dealt with it with the Troth's Curse, but I really felt that leaving it up for at least this turn was going to be the best option. With no Evolve, we don't need to worry about any kind of going super wide, and I'm really not worried by Queen of White being an actual problem.
It's not enough yet.
Especially since we can now pretty much guarantee the removal this turn. Having more than enough followers here to really pump into these should be really nice. Our Peacock's going to get a pretty decent value, killing this 2/2 Mars, while buffing everything in our hand with a draw effect. And then the Troth's Curse, of course, will remove the Peacock and draw a card. So overall, I think we come out on top in that situation. And not really at the cost of much, as they didn't even go for damage to face. Not yet, anyway. So, we can now clear everything with Authoress, which is pretty reasonable, especially considering. So you do get to remove at least one of these pretty quickly. Fortunately, it wasn't the ward. If we could have removed the ward, I think that would have still been a little bit better. Would have left us in the same spot, but hitting wards always feels nice with effects over actually hitting just things that are already behind a ward.
Don't get too carried away.
Magical Marksman. Of course, they're probably pumping those Fatal Spell Bombs so they can remove these effectively.
Sleep forever.
Does give us some nice draws. Catacombs is something that will work in our favour later on. And now, Black Swan does get its value. I mean, it's still going to be very, very weak, but at least now it's going to require something to get rammed into it, as there aren't many spells that Sword has now that they could utilise, unless they have another Valse. Of course, Barbarossa, that's not a bad option. Pretty crappy way to have to trade it, but not the worst. And unfortunately we burned our Catha. Little unfortunate, and our Corpse Lord, of course. Back-to-back legendaries get burned, that's always my luck. So I decided to go wide with this board, knowing that I could set up the Demonic Lord coming down next turn, hopefully. Sorry, Demon Lord, I always think Demonic because we have so many good Demonic cards.
From the flames of war, the fame of warriors.
Troth's Curse, those should give us some decent value as well.
The fame of warriors.
These Barbarossas are really just getting pumped onto the board now for pretty much no good reason. Just because they can, and they have pretty much infinite value. Considering we don't have any major banishes, and there's not really any point playing anything else, it's probably the best way to go about it. They are going to get these super cheap next turn. but we hold enough value on our board to really mess our opponent up.
Of your wretched
We get 6 damage off these skeletons, which will back themselves up,
Don't forget this name.
and we get to completely remove this board, keeping our 7-3, which requires a Barbarossa to trade. So, Gwaine, that's another good option, especially since it will lower the cost on all commanders.
From the flames of war.
So there's at least one of the Barbarossas. We're going to see probably both of them come down now.
From the flames of war. The fame of
Being able to see both of them come down in this way should be pretty good. But Zombie Party is going to allow us to swarm the board again, and Trust Curse is going to allow us to remove Gwaine, while getting at least 1 damage to the face, setting up any kind of potential we would have with a Demon Lord or Aisha. We don't need much to stick to this board, but any little bit helps. Roland, though, is going to be some trouble, especially since now we need to hit at least 3 times instead of just hitting for maybe 2, which would have been a lot easier. So bringing them down to 8 is my goal. If I can get them to 8, it's going to be a lot easier to take them down. We do have the little Soul Squasher, which will let us remove the Roland pretty easily. But then we do still have the 2 Barbarossas we need to deal with, which fortunately Zombie Party should do a good job of.
They're so fresh. This blade is yours.
So we get our 1 damage. I go for the Prince Catacomb just to guarantee that we have something on board,
Don't forget this.
just in case, and just build up whatever we can.
Decay and shine.
So all we need is no wards, and we should be able to go for lethal.
In the name of glory.
And of course, King Arthur is going to present us with a ward, as our luck is never great. But at least it's a reasonably weak ward that we should just be able to use a couple of these 1/1s that we have that will come out of these skeletons.
From the flames of war. The fame of warriors.
So all we need is 2 1/1s, and that will be enough, as long as they didn't evolve the ward. If they had of, I guess we would have had to try and buy more time, probably bait Zombie Party or something like that. Of course, getting Demon Lord definitely gave us a huge advantage. Even if we hadn't have been able to get past this ward, at least Demon Lord would have helped. So it would have dragged things out, but I think we still could have come back from it.
Your story
But
ends here.
Underworld will close this game out pretty easily.
I should have foreseen this.
So our next match is against Haven. Usually Haven is a pretty bad matchup for Shadow on a whole, just because Haven usually packs quite a few tools that really beat down on the Shadow architecture, which isn't great. I mean, Shadow tends to like to keep its last word effects in play, whereas Haven was tending to just remove things and kill everything off as quickly as possible, banishes being one of their primary uses. And of course, my opponent had to slam down Summit on turn 1, which is a little disappointing. Seeing that Summit come down really hurt my feelings, just right in the feels. But at least we can do something. Double Bellinus isn't too bad to be able to play out. Peacock works well if we can get that out on 4, and take advantage of maybe the Trust Curse to go along with it. Of course, banishments, as mentioned, they really like taking advantage of those. Luckily it was used on something like Bellinus in the early game, and not on something more important. So I don't mind losing it there. And of course, Gemstone Carapace, so really high value cards. And Moria is gonna absolutely decimate me later, once that thing goes off. But at least we can kind of throw something out. I didn't really want to force this Bellinus to have a draw effect on it. I didn't want too much of my hand to be stacked up. So I thought doing this was perfectly acceptable. Putting just that extra draw a little bit. I mean, we've got 2 draw powers on board already, we didn't really need 3.
This jewelry for you is...
Plus, it makes Bellinus less of a target for a banishment. So, White Diamond going for draws.
The moonlight. One of a kind. Like
And of course an Evo on the little priestess. At least we get a ping. Unfortunately, it's not where we need it. If it was on the 3-2, I could have at least traded pretty reasonably with the 1-2. Fortunately, now Trust Curse is probably my best bet. And Zombie Party off the top deals with that really well. Especially since we don't leave anything for them to get value out of.
For you is
So 1-2 and the Moria. White Diamond. So they're going for a lot of draw power, which doesn't work in our favour much. The more cards they have, the more ways they're going to beat us down. But at least their board is pretty stacked with amulets. So they're not going to be able to play too much. Our biggest threat would probably be to see a Priest of the Cudgel come down now with an Evo. Beacon of Salvation isn't bad either, but it doesn't remove everything flat out. So I don't mind that quite as much. And while we're just off using Demon Lord, I'm going to probably play the Skull Ring with a Prince Catacomb to really bolster our shadows and secure a good, decent board. Especially with a nice Evo to face for an extra 3 damage, bringing him down to 15. Getting him to 10 is kind of my keystone. Once I can get them there, I should be able to beat them with an Underworld if I can get it, or even just with a Demon Lord, as that's a pretty good range to be able to deal lethal from. Of course, Cudgel coming down now. Doesn't surprise me too much.
crystals of snow.
Especially when Snow White's coming as well.
Make me wild.
So they are going to be able to get rid of one of these skeletons, probably the 3-3, that's the most likely target for it. Which isn't too bad. I mean, we don't lose a lot of value, just enough that it's kind of frustrating. The Beacon went face. A little more interesting. Probably to stop my Demon Lord getting a full value out of its followers. It's probably exactly why they went face. But I'm going to get enough value out of this that I don't need to worry. I mean, 8 damage to the face this turn, plus nice setup to deal at least 6 next turn, unless they somehow manage to remove it all. It's pretty reasonable. Especially since if they do manage to remove it all, they are going to be putting me very, very close to what I need for my second Demon Lord.
Crystals of snow, shimmering.
And with those plays, that really doesn't leave them much room.
The bones embrace me.
Oh. So with this Belinus that we're going to get, or well, I pretty much could guess it was going to be Belinus. Even if it wasn't, we still would have been in a really good spot. We've played enough cards now that the odds of getting something that was a 2-drop were really high. Getting a good 2-drop, that is. And even if we hadn't have got Belinus, we would have been able to trade with this 7-3, well, now 7-3, regardless of what we got. So setting up that was actually really good. Not seeing the 7-6 remove did leave us with lethal.
Fine, fine. I admit I lost.
So, Mid-Shadow, what to say overall? Well, it's definitely doing better than it was at least a month ago. It was really struggling, at least when I was playing it, to keep up with a lot of decks, but this revision and our current meta seems to favour this kind of variant a little bit more now, which is nice to see in the rotation format. Shadow is still probably one of the weaker classes. I've mentioned that in a lot of videos, I'm sure you guys probably get sick of hearing that, but it is definitely the case. You can't deny that Shadow is definitely struggling to keep up with a lot of the rotation cards. I would like to see that change a little bit, maybe just bring it in line with a little bit with stuff and not throw it too overpowered, but just keep it at that kind of nice level where we can see a lot of the cards played and have a lot of fun with it. So if you did enjoy the video, hit that like button and subscribe. You can find deck list in the description below, and I will catch you guys next time. See ya.